Welcome to Coinchange Guest AMA. Today we have a very special guest, Alex Shkor, on the show. He's the CEO of Collective Intelligence Lab, aka CIL, that we will be using along the AMA. In brief, CIL has been working on an innovative bridging solution, or should I say an Omnichain smart contract solution. He joined CIL in 2021. He's board of director of Paralect, which is an accelerator and venture studio. He's also a think tank member of Blockchain for Science since 2017. Alex, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So, topic of the AMA for today is bridge, like I said, and essentially how CIL works within all of this interoperability space, which at times can be very difficult to grasp because there's many different concepts that are being used. If you're not already, Coinchange released a research report on the subject on bridges. It's basically giving high-level overview of what bridges are, why we need them in the space, and how we can make them more secure. You can read the report directly on the website under our resources. So that's the brief introduction. First question, Alex, would be, can you describe briefly what CIL has been working on and tell us what is basically the main innovation that you guys are having?
Yeah, so first of all, we definitely call it not a bridging solution. We call it Omni Chain infrastructure. We call it we now have a name for it. It's CILA. It's like seal but with A, and from like Russian it translates as power. So it's like a nice coincidence. And and the solution we are building, it's Omnichain smart contract infrastructure. I would say it's in general purpose Omnichain smart contract infrastructure, which basically allows to build smart contracts which resides on multiple chains. And as a user and as a developer and as application, you don't even need to know on what chain the smart contract resides. Basically, you make a call through a specific router, and it finds the most optimal way for execution of every transaction. And this kind of makes bridge solution obsolete at all, like and all cross-chain solutions obsolete, because you don't even need anymore any smart contract to talk to any smart contract, because it's a part of infrastructure. It's part of Omnichain infrastructure. So you don't need to have your smart contract on one chain to call a smart contract on another chain, because your smart contract kind of in superposition. It resides on all these chains simultaneously.
Right. So here I think we need to maybe get a step back and actually first kind of understand what current bridges are doing, and then we can jump into how Omnichain is both different, but then also allowing bridges, right? So the report we published, we kind of highlighted there's two main ways that a bridge can work, right? One is centralized by different validators, right? And then we have the decentralized versions. Then we can talk about the hybrid ones, which are a mix of centralized bridge and decentralized validation mechanism. So here, CILA, the Omnichain infrastructure that you are building, does it fit within this framework, or is it completely out of this kind of framework of understanding? We have validation processes, validation mechanisms. How does it work?
Yeah, so first of all, guys, you did a really great job. Amazing report. Highly recommend to everyone to read it. It really highlights all their problems of the bridges and in general structure as well, current landscape. But I will just argue a little bit with you about decentralized, centralized, and hybrid. I will say it is spectrum from 0% to 100%, and it's just like not yet reached to have like 100%, and we can just on a way to get it. So in this case, like I will say yes, like it kind of lays into your categorization and into your framework, and it puts some module which is like similar to current solutions in terms of like which is just a part of the whole infrastructure we have into decentralized one. And even though we gradually decentralizing our solution, we are not like striving right away into full decentralization mode. We implemented the POC. There are some centralized parts, and we have a roadmap how we gradually replace the centralized parts with the decentralized ones.
So we are on the topic of bridges. We're mainly talking about blockchains, right? So the Omni Chain smart contract is basically allowing contract to be deployed and actually execute across all the chain at once, right? So you only need to deploy one time the contract, and then you can basically execute functions across all chains, right? So with bridges, we have the concept of validating the states of those blockchains, right? And that's where that's why bridges get hacked so much, because it's very hard to have a consensus between different state on different blockchains, right? Especially when they're not the same type or category, right? If they're not an EVM, for example. So how this works in the case of omni-chain contracts?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And like it also leads us to basically the main challenge in the industry we were able to solve. So basically why it was not possible before, why there is no yet omni-chain smart contract, because it obviously gives tremendous advantage for builders. You like just build once, you like of course like it's already advantage, but also you are not exposed to any infrastructure details. You just implement business logic of your smart contract. You don't even need to know how to communicate to different bridges, how to communicate different cross-chain solutions, and so on. And but the challenge that was present in the industry before is how to achieve full data consistency of smart contracts on two different chains. Like basically that you anytime have the same data, and even if it's inconsistent at some period of time, eventually it's always consistent. And this is like what we apply, eventually consistent model. It's basically core in our technology. It's secure and sourcing approach, concurrence, query responsibility. It's kind of standard in the industry, in distributed systems for strong consistency, strong conventional consistency data systems. And this is an architecture which with what like different financial systems built when you cannot have the loss of funds and or like inconsistency of data. What you potentially can have, for example, with some advertising platforms, you can you're okay to have some inconsistency. If like some user was shown an advertisement which is not 100% accurate and it's already a little bit obsolete, it's okay. It's not a big deal. But if you have like money spent 2 times, it's like kind of a big problem. And we've been working with this architecture a lot, and we basically applied it to have infrastructure which allows to deploy this special execution environment, event-centric execution environment on any chain, independently what is their virtual machine, what is the execution environment, can deploy it anywhere. And basically establishing 2 layers underneath blockchain and above blockchain. I would say like above execution layer. Underneath it's aggregation layer, which where router resides, and aggregator. Aggregator aggregates all the data for read. Router is for write. It's also on every layer with split data model according to CQRS principle. So we segregate data model on every layer. And above there is a relay layer which transmits events between all the chains. So and this is basically the core innovation, how to solve this challenge. And we building on top of technological solution to solve this challenge.
Right. Okay. So essentially, the CQRS infrastructure and way to validate the state. I mean, validating all the events, eventually making sure that we have consistency of the state is the main innovation. So from my understanding, it would mean that those aggregators and relayers are kind of now forming new layers, like you said, right? They essentially become, we can't say similar as L1 type of blockchains like Ethereum, Cosmos, and the rest, but they do become like blockchains in some way, right? They become
They become
networks of nodes, right?
nodes in the
Yeah,
layer. So
a
when you
network
have
of nodes.
layered architecture, what it means is you have a layer when you have like independent solutions on each layers which compete between each other according to specific protocol. And yes, by creating this infrastructure, we kind of create a possibility for everyone to deploy their own relayer, their own aggregator, their own router. And this kind of creates also a market for optimization, because people will be finding ways how to create a more efficient relay, how to create more efficient router, how to create more efficient aggregator.
Right. Okay. So your relayers will work similarly to the MEV bots and the relayers on the layer ones, right? They will basically be here in order to make sure that they are able to optimize routing of the other functions to the different execution layers. Okay. So then they will be incentivized, right?
Yeah. And this, what also it will create, it will create healthy competition between blockchains for efficient executions. Because right now they compete just for attention of attention of users, and effectively attention of buyers of their native currencies. This is the main incentive for blockchains, because there's like no kind of common tube from which the transaction comes and served to all the blockchain based on their performance. And once it will be a thing, the most performant blockchains will be on top, the least performant will be in lower spectrum, let's put it like this.
So can we say that this would kind of add centralization layer on top of blockchains that exist as of today?
But I will not say it's centralization layer. It's kind of synchronization layer. It's a relay layer. It's synchronization layer. But there can be many. So in every execution chain can be connected to multiple layers, multiple relays. So and can be transmitting these events to different chains, and like every relay can be connected to different set of chains. So it's not necessary everyone is connected to everyone.
Right, makes sense. So we were talking about synchronizing the stream of events, right, across those chains. Here we are concerned about decentralization. So you were saying that first you were starting at first a bit centralized, but what are the plans in making this new kind of layer that you guys are creating more decentralized over time? What are the plans here?
Yeah, so plan is straightforward. We create a protocol, we open source a protocol, and maybe we will open source a solution which will allow people to create different solutions for relays. And there will be two types of relays, pessimistic and optimistic. at least two types, and every relay eventually will be optimizing itself for the set of chains they connected to. Because like if you connect to one set of chains, you might introduce one set of optimization techniques. If you connect to another set of chains, you might introduce another set of optimization techniques, and this kind of will be open market. So like
Yes.
you always will have to decide where is the most profitable way for you to implement your relay.
Right. So then in this case, let's say we look at Coinchange, right, as a company, and we want to deploy a smart contract and use we want to use the Omni Chain contract infrastructure, right? So how does this work? Do we want to do we deploy the contract in which kind of language, and then do we need to route it directly to the relay? Do we need to go through a node infrastructure provider? Or how does it work when we look at the end user like Coinchange, right?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So first of all, when you deploy a smart contract, you do it the same as you do any transaction, just like special transaction to deploy a smart contract. So you do it also through the router, and the router will find where actually to deploy a contract will be the most efficient. Maybe it will decide it based on how you use memory. Maybe it will be like what type of like collections you use in your smart contract, whatever. Like we don't even know. Maybe it will decide based on which other smart contracts you want to connect to, and find the cluster where they present all. So you don't need to do cross-chain transactions much. So because like you will just be on just one chain. Cross aggregate, not cross chain, cross aggregate transactions. It's like our internal concept, because we do not operate with cross chain transactions, because like we have entities and they reside on all the chains, but they still sometimes need to talk to each other. So like some smart contracts, and it creates like additional complexity. And the less complexity you have within your Omnichain smart contract, the less how to say the less money you will be spending on every transaction. So long story short, when you deploy it, you don't need to know where exactly it resides. Possibly some routers will provide a feature to force deployment on specific chains if you want to. But I imagine that at some point they will be just trying to provide you the most optimal execution. In the first release of our platform, we will provide just a limited set of smart contracts, predefined smart contracts, which will be available for users. And then we will release, and this will be easy to use because you will basically select a template and you deploy it right away. You just set parameters and deploy it. But then in the next release, after that one, we will already release domain-specific language, DSL, which will allow to implement any custom smart contract and deploy it just once.
Okay, understood. Yeah, that's one question I had following up, is for more complex transactions. Let's say when we look at more than 10, 15, maybe 30 transactions within 30 calls within one transaction, how it would work. So I guess it would be in upcoming release. Okay.
Yeah, this is like what I tried to explain in previous answer. But it was a little bit hectic. I will just say what we use for this. Like we use Saga pattern. It's like it's a very common pattern for CQRS. So basically, this problem of these cross aggregate calls already solved in CQRS because of the nature of architecture. You simply cannot do it other way, kind of like this. So you have only one. You cannot avoid. You cannot like make a mistake. Like by making by forcing the contract into inconsistent state. You cannot do this. Like it's not possible within infrastructure.
Right. Okay. Yeah, very complex. Let's take a step back and go to actually the meaning of CIL, Collective Intelligence Lab. So I was reading the white paper, and you're proposing to have kind of a layer zero, which would serve as a governance for Web3, right? Could you provide a bit more information on that? What's the vision here? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it's kind of layer -1 actually, because layer 0 is relay layer. If we take numbers, we just don't call it with numbers. We call it with names.
Okay.
And core layer is a layer for synchronization of relays, because at some point when the ecosystem grows, not every relay will be able to maintain a kind of a fingerprint of the state of all the chains it connected to. So it will not be able to connect to all the chains. So now you will have a set of different relays which just have a subset of all the aggregates of all the data in Web3. And now you need somehow to synchronize it. And it's easy to synchronize it because basically they just need to merge their event stream and kind of merge Merkle tree of all aggregate states. It's easy from technical perspective, but now you need to decide which, if there is a conflict between relays, what if they have conflicting nodes in this Merkle tree, and now you need somehow to decide. And this is like how, when we introduce the term epoch, and when we create like a next layer, which already don't have a native token. So core layer cannot have a native token because it will create infinite layers of decentralization, because infinite layers of synchronization. You will just transfer the same problem from relays to the next layer. So we need
Correct.
to stop it somewhere.
Yeah.
And this is like where I say, okay, here is just one, but it still has to be decentralized. And here we need to think deeper about what is decentralization actually means, because it's not necessary just that there will be a layer with multiple nodes which every has its own token like share. It's basically a way of decentralization, kind of like based on capital, based on not based on owning based on open market and owning a share of every node. So you have many nodes, and if system becomes centralized, anybody can create a new node and start a new business, sell the shares of this node to new stakeholders, new token holders, and kind of like infinite loop of decentralization. But you cannot have the same thing on every layers, because it will go infinitely in like infinite number of layers. But what actually token means? What is token? What is share? It's actually institution. It's just like institution, governance institution, that you have like a number of people who can influence decision-making process. And what is decentralization? Is ability of people, of how many people who should be able to influence decision, have a knowledge, expertise, or whatever, if they can influence this decision. So, and that's why we realized, okay, on this layer, on core layer, we cannot afford anymore the same model which was on present layers. So we need build another one. And here where DAOs starts to compete. So basically the most decentralized DAO will be governing core layer. It's not necessarily the one we created. It might be another one. But the DAO which will have the most support of people, which will create like incentive system, voting mechanism, and so on. We propose like our 3-chamber parliament, but it might be any different any other different model. And this is like will be like, okay, now we need to make a bet on specific DAO design, which is the most decentralized one. Let's choose this one.
Right. Very, very interesting. I mean, it's basically putting the people back into actually governing things, right? We're not just talking about numbers, tokens, machine just doing the work, right? We have actually people experts actually thinking about what it means to have decentralization for all those financial
Yeah,
aspects and the different blockchains. Very interesting.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So could you provide a bit more information about this how do we say that selection process? Is it really a selection, or how would it be kind of created just like that? So you were
Yeah.
saying taking the most decentralized DAO, but then we obviously want to have plenty of DAOs, right? With different types of people, different expertise. How it would be created and have kind of this multi-influential type of governance process, right? From different angles and point of views.
Yeah. That's where we come to collective intelligence name even, like, and this is like what we try to utilize. Like in the first DAO is very simple, but it will evolve. And basically in the core of this DAO is how to utilize expertise of people with decision making. So we created like a DAO, we created a number of committees for specific purpose, for specific expertise. But eventually it's not that inclusive. So this is a council which decides itself whom to include into the council. So it's not how to say not the most inclusive system, but it's basically expertise system. So we anyway need to make a bet at some future point on an initial number of experts in this system, in this specific like part of a DAO. But also there will be two other chambers, which kind of in the paper I put like it's number 2 and number 3, but they actually equal on their weight. It's trade chamber and liquid democracy. Basically, where a trade chamber is voting with capital, so it's kind of like any decision has to go through this trade chamber, and any decision has to go through direct democracy, liquid democracy, when every person have one vote. And this is how we achieve inclusion. So the proposals comes from experts, but if they're not accepted by capital and by people, they do not go through the system.
Right, almost like veto, right? So if
Yeah.
it's not agreed by those two other chambers, then it can't go through, and then it needs to be reworked and then reproposed. Okay,
Yeah.
very insightful. Yeah, I guess that's something that we're kind of missing. We have those new DAOs coming into place. I mean, not really that new, but they call them meta DAOs, right? Which are still need to be defined. Very insightful, very interesting. Um, where can people actually find more information about CIL and get to know what your guys are doing and probably also join you guys onto this endeavor?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, it's collectiveintelligence.dev. It's our website where you can learn more about things we do and the governance structures. We're also now starting to maintain public activity in Twitter and Telegram. So we can post links in the comments.
Right, definitely. We'll be including those links directly on the YouTube description. Um, One question is, what is the current state? Are you already guys deploying on mainnet? What's the first few blockchains that you guys have integrated and yeah, kind of
Right.
integrated?
So we just this week actually last week we finished the first POC, and this week we showed it to our advisors and private network, and this was like a very important step, because like for about 5 months we were just working on architecture, because this like is really big. It's the biggest one I ever designed, and I've been designing distributed systems for 14 years. But POC, because we defined architecture that well, we were able to deliver POC quite quick. So we delivered it like about 2 months as the first working version of 4 layers. We don't need the 5th layer to show that it's working, obviously, because like it will be on the next stage when we need to synchronize the relays. And in the first POC, we built it with EVM chains. It's 2 testnets of Ethereum, Girl and Sequoia, and Aurora.
Right. I mean, congrats on the launch of the POC.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Alex, that was very insightful, kind of technical. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today, and looking forward to more coming from CIL and actually seeing this vision coming to fruition.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting. It was really cool to discuss it with you. I'm really pleased with our talk, and stay tuned. Follow us as well, and maybe we will have another talk in future when we will be already discussing when everything is launched and operating.
For sure, yes, we'll definitely circle back once you guys have more coming and more exciting news to share. Thanks,
Sounds
Alex.
good.
Bye.
Thank you.